you're live. Okay, so yeah, so what has been going on for the last 17 minutes is I've been talking to nobody. I have no idea um, what happened there. I think it had something to do with the fact that I was setting up a time to go live. Like I set up a reminder and scheduled it, and so as a result, we're starting over. I have no idea. At this point, I've been streaming for 17 minutes. And I feel like it's entirely possible that no one was able to see what I was streaming for the last 17 minutes. So we're going to start all over again. Oh my goodness. What a absolute disaster. So I'm just going to switch back over here for a second. Let you see some slides. Then I'm going to switch over here and continue to see the slides. And I guess I'm just going to quickly recap my ramblings for the last 17 minutes. It says I've only been live for 57 seconds now. So basically we're looking at an hour. Yeah, so in the chat, I don't know what happened. This is the first day that I scheduled my stream with YouTube. And I think what happened was that when I attached, normally when I go in the software, it just goes live. But it looks like it was giving me some sort of a preview. So I sat there and streamed all alone to myself for about 17 minutes. And now I'm back. Now I'm live. Hopefully. It says I'm live now. It doesn't say preview anymore. I guess I should have seen that before. But again, live and learn, live and learn, live and learn. So I started off the stream with a hearty. Let's see if I can do it again. I'm gonna get a drink of water here first before I move on this, because it is Orktober. And what does Orktober mean? Well, Orktober means we have to start the stream with a WOG! And now that I've got that little bit of cringe out of the way, I'll switch back on because I didn't want you to see me screaming. And we'll talk about orcs, because I love orcs. I love orcs going all the way back to the first few orcs that I ever started painting. And yeah, I first started painting orcs probably around 86, 87, when I was in the midst of painting just random fantasy models. So I'd buy for a Dungeons and Dragons game that I probably never played, but I just like painting fantasy miniatures at that time. It was just something I was slowly getting into. And the first Citadel models I ever picked up were actually orcs. They were a pair of orcs. This is one of them. So this guy right here, I'm just going to hold him up like this, and actually I can switch over to here, and I'll hold him up, and you'll get a much better view of him. So this guy, I bought in a blister with another orc. And I don't have that particular orc anymore. I'm not sure where he's gone. He's been lost to history, lost to time. His chronicle is with me is over. But he was kind of like this guy, only he had a different weapon and a different head, because that's a lot of the older models, especially metal models of this era. And when we get into these down here, we'll talk about how a lot of what Kev Adams, who was designed the bulk of these orcs, almost all of them. Actually, every single orc that's on this table, he did design. I have some that the Perrys did later on, and some earlier ones that were done by other sculptors. But Kev Adams, being the Goblin Master, his are the orcs. He's the one who really created what I'm looking at on my table here. So yeah, hopefully people are actually watching now, and I'm actually live. I'm not seeing viewers, and I'm so sad, so sad. So pay attention. What are you saying? Okay, never mind. Let's get back to talking about this. Sorry, let's cut back to Orktober. I did the 15 minutes I did just to myself was so good. So yeah, so I picked up, I think, and I was saying in my 15 minutes before that I was streaming to myself. Upset about that, as you can tell, because I keep repeating it to myself. As I said, I think my first exposure to orcs was probably the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings movie, the animated one. So I think that's yay! Thank you, Galbraith, for telling me no, I'm live. That's great. I wonder if you can even go back and see my preview, like when I go to upload this, if my preview will actually be included as part of the stream. So I don't know where your time is at on it, But if you're at about 22 minutes, then you've got my first 17 minutes, and then you've got the point where I discover that, hey, I might actually not actually be live. But I'm live now, so, and we're talking about orcs, and we're talking about Orktober, because Orktober is the most wonderful time of the year. I plan my entire social schedule around this month. This is a celebration of orcs. And whether you spell orc with a K or orc with a C, it doesn't matter because orcs can't spell. So I've chosen to go with the K because this month what I'm going to be painting is space orcs. Space orc raiders. So that's these boys down here. So no, it's just not live, no preview time. Okay, so well then I don't feel like I'm repeating myself to myself while I sort of recap what I discussed in those previous moments. So I think I had talked about that my buddy Nico and I bought orcs and I painted orcs, and I really liked painting these orcs, these Kev Adams orcs, the ones that I had. So I tried to track down a few more, and I was very excited because these were some of the first Slotta base models I'd ever bought. Previous to that, I was painting mostly models with molded on lead bases. I wasn't painting game pieces. It wasn't until 40K came along, and then I really started, then it became less about me being a miniature painter and me being a Warhammer painter, because that's sort of where that shift of just painting random fantasy models because I enjoyed it, to trying to build a collection of something that I could use for something bigger, right? Which was Rogue Trader at the time. And I think I said that my first Rogue Trader collection was very haphazard. It was very much whatever I could find in blisters, because at that point, the Silver Snail in Toronto, it was building at 2 floors, and the second floor, the main floor was all comic books, and then the second floor was all role-playing games, miniatures, model kits, posters, what you would now call geek culture, but that's not what we called it at the time. It was that kind of a store, great store. Silver Snail in the 80s was the place to be, man. But if you were a comic collector, you didn't necessarily buy your comics at Silver Snail. You probably bought your comics at Dragon Lady or Grey Legion, or what was the other one? There was one more down there. There was a couple of them. There was like the Comic Book Warehouse. It's all on Old Queen West in Toronto, and it was just us live. No I want proof of the missing content was good. It's entirely possible, Tyler, that this content's going to be better, because I think the first WOG was better because I was able to put more into it, but the second WOG is going to have to do. But you know what? We got a whole month here. We got a whole month to WOG and to geek out over greenskins and goblins and grots and snotlings and smushlings and snot rooms and squigs and all that good stuff that is the orc, the Games Workshop orc milieu, sort of their concept of orcs and what. And I'm going to discuss all kinds of orcs, because I'm going to celebrate all kinds of orcs, even orcs I don't really care for, which I'll give you a spoiler alert. It's Warcraft orcs. I'm not a fan there, but I'm a fan of these orcs. So I had a few of these when I was a kid. I think someone had... I bought a few blisters of orcs, but I didn't have an orc army. I bought a few blisters of Imperial Guard, but I didn't have an Imperial Guard army. I bought a few blisters of pirates, but I didn't have a pirate army. So whatever my Rogue Trader collection was, it wasn't anything that I could actually really play a real game with, because when Rogue Trader first came out, there weren't army lists. The first real army lists came in the Book of the Astronomicon. And one of the streams that I'm going to do, is I'm going to go through all the various orc army lists. So from the orcs, and we'll figure out what day next week that I'll do that, because so the orcs that appear in here, I will sort of touch on and describe, and then the orcs that appear in here, this is my Surlock's Bound reproduction of Chapter Approved. High quality scans on really high quality paper in Surlock's Bound. I also have There's no orcs in the compendium. There's no orcs in the compilation. Because what orcs got that no one else in Rogue Trader era really got was they got an army book. So this is the first army book that covers just one specific faction in 40k, and for Rogue Trader it was the only one. This would sort of become the template for how they would do codexes, but not really, because the way that the army list in here is presented is quite different. This is a high quality scan and a reproduction. That was an orc with a plasma cannon. He was just falling over there, buddy. So, and then there's also, after that, there's the lore book, which is, so that's another thing that the orcs got that no one else got in Rogue Trader, was they got this Wog the Orcs, which doesn't actually have any real rules in it. It is 99% background. The only real rules in here are like the name generator. That's the only thing that gives you a chart to roll dice on. Everything else in this book is lore. And so to say that the orcs were the most fleshed out faction in Rogue Trader 40k is an understatement, because they absolutely were. There were Space Marine army lists, there were Squad army lists, there were Imperial Guard army lists, there were Eldar army lists. And there were multiples of those as well, because the earliest Space Marine army lists, which again would be in Rogue Trader, because the Battle at the Farm, which was the sort of the demo campaign, it's Space Marines versus Orcs, and it's those two initial boxes. The RTBO won the plastic Marines, although the mostly metal Marines in here, versus the RTBO 2. I believe RTBO 2 is the Space Orc Raider box set. Yeah. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's not a big deal, right? So, and in that Space Orc Raider box, and I may have discussed this on a previous stream, but it's Orktober, so it's all new and fantastic. Look, Orktober, Orktober. I'm very excited about this month, just in case you can't tell. So yeah, so this was one of the models that came in that initial Space Orc Raider box. And then you got one of these, which was the Heavy Bolter Boy. Then you got this guy, who I think was the big boss. Like these two guys are kind of like underbosses. Now there's one more model that you got that I don't actually own. I had ordered it and then received the wrong model, because as I don't think I had mentioned this, because I think I mentioned it in my preview stream. So I'm trying to remember, what did I talk about in the preview stream? What didn't I? Back in these days with metal models, what a sculptor would often do is sculpt one and then change the head, change the weapon, change a few details on it, but use the same basic body. So I've got a couple of examples here, right? So here's a really good example of that. So these are essentially based on the same model. The difference is that this guy is holding his head here. I assume maybe this one was sculpted first, or he probably sculpts the body and then worries about detailing afterwards. But if you look at the model, it's almost identical in many, many ways, except for the head and arms. And there were a lot of models that were like that. In fact, the four original, four or five? I think it's these four. Is it you? No, it's not you. Who's the other one? You. So these are the four basic, and their base tabs say Trooper on them. So these are the four basic orc boys that came in that Space Orc Raiders box set, and you got a random mix of these to get you to 16 models, I think. So I think there's 16 models in that box. So it would be the four characters. The fourth one looking somewhat like this guy, but this guy basically being the alternate version of him. And I did order the one that came in the Space Orc Raider box, and they sent me another one of these. So I have two of these. So I have a duplicate of this guy, which I'll do something with at some point. But I wanted the one that actually came in the box. He has a different head, but literally it's a different head. And other than that, it's the identical model. So that's what you did. This is back before we had multi-part plastic kits. So how do you make different Space Orcs? Well, you take the same basic body, and I think on these there were like two. Like you can see like the fold in the pants, and you can see where like this is essentially the same. Oh, you're the boss. You're not one of the guys. You are an alternate version of You got to be here somewhere. Yeah, this one. There we go. Now we got it. Now we're on track. So these are the 4 Ork Troopers that came in the Space Ork Raiders box, and you can see like this guy is based off this. This guy was available in a blister separately later. All of these guys have alternate versions, and then I've got, and some of them are really like are pretty well done in terms of like how hard it is to tell that they are based on the same basic body. Like these 2 guys. Well, I love this one because he's got the helmet on a stick here. And of course, I painted up that helmet as a Crimson Fist. Because why not, right? And then this guy here. So they're like the same basic body. 2 fairly different models. So that's an example of it done right. And I don't... I have acquired most of these orcs within the last 6 months or so, when I just decided that, you know what, I'm done with, for now, I'm done with old Warhammer fantasy stuff, and I kind of want to do some old Warhammer Rogue Trader stuff. So that's probably going to take me through to the end of the year in terms of what it is that I have planned to paint. This is Orktober, so I am painting orcs, obviously. And this, the entire impetus for this was my buddy, message retracted, my buddy, my good friend, my friend, my acquaintance, my guy I know over at Logan's Miniature Mart, Michael Logan. Big shout out, because he found in his mysterious wizarding ways, because I'm pretty sure he's some kind of a miniature wizard. In his wizarding ways, he found a whole bunch of Rogue Trader Space Orc stuff, new in blister, some of it. Some of it was just loose, and he offered it to me, and I was in no position to not take him up on his offer. So with that like initial little bit, and which is most of this painted stuff over here, is that initial little bit. And I'll show off these guys too, because I love them. Like this guy, we'll call him Frenchie. I think that's the name I gave him, because he's wearing a little beret. He's got a little maroon beret, so he's like I don't know, maybe he's a British paratrooper or something, right? But great models. And then the one that I showed you, and then like, so these are mostly came out of blisters. And what he also had, which was what had me drooling, was he had an original Space Orc Dreadnought, new in blister, and he had the expansion set for it, which allowed you to make the bigger Dreadnought with more guns and weapons, in blister as well. So that's what this is, and I haven't quite finished this. The banner, his pole is not, but I'm just going to take that off for now. But this is the big red one. It's like a big red egg, and I'm kind of looking at him. I painted this before I had made the decision to go with blood axes, and I was probably going to do Goths. So I'm not sure what I really need to do here. But I thought about adding some like drab greens in it, but that red is so nice, so I think I might just leave it and just call him the big red one. And if I ever get my hands, oh, look, he's letting you know what he thinks of you. If I ever get my hands on another one of these, I have, so in the expansion pack, you got this midsection, you got extra arms and extra weapons, and these longer legs. So I have the shorter legs. They're in a bag over here, and I'll show you these. Yeah. So in here are the shorter legs, the little stubbier legs. If I get another one of those, I'll do it on the stubby legs, because that's cute. And the driver. I debated whether or not I was going to put the driver in it, so having the cupola up here open or closed. I decided to just go for the enclosed look, because the way that he's stomping forward, he's on his way. He's coming at you, so he wouldn't be peeking out the top. He'd be using his little vision slits here or whatever, right? And it loves to burn, because it's got a flamer, not a heavy flamer, because heavy flamers didn't exist at that point. They existed a little bit later in Rogue Trader, but Orcs, and here we go, they're just flamers. And he's got a plasma cannon, because he's the Burninator, and he loves to burn things, and that's why I guess he's red. So, and then this is the banner that I painted, and this banner came out of the Book of the Astronomicon, and I just printed it up on some like parchment-y style paper, and then painted it, and you can see I varnished it so it's quite crisp. And I need to finish the banner pole. I drilled a hole through the banner pole and put this cross beam in so that the flag can hang. And this banner is actually listed as it's the first banner GW ever made for an Orc Dreadnought. So I figured that's the one I'm going to use, and it's from the Arch Arsonist of Charadon, which is one of the earliest sort of dramatis personae orc characters, and he's in the Book of the Astronomicon, or at least his army list is in the Book of the Astronomicon, because those army lists in there are specific to that campaign. So there's a Marine army list in Book of the Astronomicon where they're toughness 3. That's right, kids. Space Marines used to be toughness 3, and Power Army used to be 4+ save. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So there was a Marine army list, an Orc army list, an Eldar army list, a Pirate army list, and I'm probably going to be using a lot of those lists for when I actually start making gaming content, because this is an army I want to play games with. And I want to play accurate games with, which means that I'm making a Here We Go army. I'm putting my Dreadnought back there. I'm going to slowly clean up my table as I go through this stuff here. Grab my... Yes. We'll put these things away as we go. Because I am going to do a little bit of painting in a bit. Just finishing up some orc flesh, because what I realize is that painting all these models over here that are painted, which I'm going to get to. Let's look at some of these. Some of these are, oh, they're just absolutely... And this guy, his tab says DeBoz on it for some reason. And then on his shoulder, I'm trying to read what it says, but it's got some lettering on it. To you? I don't know. But that's... So why these particular models and not the later Rogue Trader models for orcs, like the ones that were specifically made for Here We Go and for freebooters? Well, I am doing those too. But I'm starting with the old school. I love this guy because I love his helmet. I'm starting with these really old ones, with these first generation ones, and working my way up. This is another model that I love. And there's a variant of him that's absolutely amazing that's got a cap. And because I'm doing Blood Axes, I want to get all those cap models. So most of these models came out 88, 89. There were a couple of waves. So there was the initial box set. There was the Space Orc Raiders box set. Then after that, they came out with a Command blister, which had like this guy in it. It had a musician. It had an Orc in power armor, and I think there was another champion model, something like this guy. I think it might have actually been this guy or his variant. So those came out later, after the initial box set. Then after that, there was a release of like another 20 of these random just Orc boys. Oh, so this is a variant. This is a variant of one of the ones that comes in the box. So these all released around the same time afterwards. And then they started to release the first vehicle they released for the orcs was the buggy, which is this here. And so I've been, this is just some grots that I stuck on a thing that I'll paint that up as assistance, because that's one of the things that the orc army really encouraged you to do. The orc army books really encouraged you to do is just create assistants and like helpers and hangers on that may or may not have rules. 4+ on 2 dice, something like that. No, that was Terminator armor. So Terminator armor, I think, was a 3+ on 2d6, because things like las cannons had a -9 save modifier or something ridiculous, or -6. Do you have any of the short buggies? Short buggies. I have this buggy, and I have 2 other buggies that are in a box behind me on the floor. So I've got 3 of this particular buggy. This one I've converted to be a Knobs personal ride. But this was the first Space Orc vehicle to come out, and it actually came out quite early. It came out at the same time that they released those Command models. So mine just comes apart in pieces because... and I've put this Blood Axe knob on the back, and I've given him the twin-linked heavy bolters that would be mounted on the buggy as his personal gun to shoot. And then I've got the driver, who's got a plasma pistol, who can't actually get a plasma pistol. However, I can buy him a plasma pistol, and if he's not shooting that, he can shoot that. Something like that. I don't think the driver... And then I stuck some random snotlings on the back just to see how it looked. I'm not even sure if I'm going to go with that direction and have snotlings on it. It might look cleaner without it, because what this guy's going to be, because they're Blood Axes, and if you don't know... It does look like a go-kart. Of course it does. If you don't know what Blood Axes are, they're the orcs who hang around with humans too much, or they're interacting with humans, and they're the only ones who will actually trade and are also easily manipulated by humans. We'll say that. So this guy's going to be the Commissar, and I'm going to paint him up all in Commissar colors. So he's going to be black and red, and his buggy will all be black and red. I've got blue tack stuffed to my hand now. And so this is his personal buggy, and he rides around and he shoots other orcs in the back if they're not doing their job, right? Because he's the Commissar. And the cool thing about, here we go, and are they snotlings in RT? Snotlings are always snotlings. They're in 40k they were often called runts. And Gretchen, so goblins were called Gretchen. And then they didn't become grots. I mean, it may have been a nickname for them, but they weren't officially grots until I think 3rd edition. No. I think the term grot probably originated in Gorka Morka, I want to say. I could be wrong. So then, like I said, they released a whole lot of other orc models. Then they started releasing things like this, which is this. I think this plus the war bike, which I don't actually have any war bikes, but I have a knob war bike. So the knob war bike basically replaces the 2 giant guns that would be on the back with a chair for your knob to sit on. So this is the knob war bike. This is the driver. Let's see if I can find I'm gonna have to go searching for that. Oh, no, that's not it. Well, that's one of them, but I'm supposed to have another one. I wonder where that's gone to. Anyways, so this is just the front of the bike, and I should have another one of these, but it's possible that it fell down and is on the floor somewhere because there may have been an issue. But so this is the little knob driver who I love. He's also got a mohawk, so I love that he like emulates his boss. So he drives this guy around, and this guy's got a plasma gun and a bionic arm or a power fist, power glove, to use the correct parlance of the time. So that was something that came out around that time. The War Track came out, and when the War Track came out, it came out in a larger clamshell pack, and it came with this. This is the Hop Splat Gun, and the Hop Splat Gun, I believe I discussed this before in another stream, but we're in Orktober, so we're talking about Orktober. This fired 2 giant cannonballs attached by a chain, so like a giant bolas. And the rules for it in the Orc book, you literally have to plot where each one lands, and it can fly off in random directions, and it causes massive destruction. And it's crewed by this guy, who is one of the first mech boys. There was a blister that was released with a mech boy. So basically your odd boys. It was like the first odd boy blister, and they were all one-piece models, and I would love to get my hands on them because they're all in this style as opposed to the later style where they had plastic arms. So they were essentially like these guys. So they would have a plastic arm or 2 plastic arms. I have an armless one here. Something like that. I just reach it to the So the plastic armed ones, and so there are a few that were one piece, and there was one blister, and I'm pretty sure I owned that blister. It's lost to memory, but I have a distinct recollection of having that blister because it had a Pain Boy, like the prototype Pain Boy, the prototype Runt Herd, the prototype Mech Boy, who this guy is, but it's a different version, similar. And the prototype, what's the one I'm missing? Weird Boy, who's the Psyker, right? And so this guy's tab says Mech Boy on it. However, I'm using him as a Runt Herd because A, Blood Axes can only have a single Runt Herd, and B, in order to take the Hop Splat gun, I have to have a Runt Herd. So it's just funny that he's packed as a Mech Boy, and these are his 2 little Gretchen assistants who are wearing armored onesies that lock up at the back. Like this guy, they both have like padlocks all the way up the back. So they're slaves. They are not happy, but someone's got to run the gun, right? And the cool thing is that the way that I did with this was I mounted this, so I pinned the wheel so that this bends. If you're wondering why this shifts up and down, it's because there are rules for the war track, and I can put that right over the trailer winch there. The war track, dragging this into battle, and these guys would just clamber on somewhere, and then once it deploys, they would pop off, and I could man it anywhere. So I could put that Hossflat gun anywhere on the table that this thing could move to, sort of thing. Or you could just set it up on its own. But the cool thing is that it can actually be towed into battle by a war track. And as you can see, I've done mine in like drab greens, and I've done my uniforms in like grays and stuff. I'm kind of going for like a, World War I, World War II, German feel, sort of. I modeled this guy's, the way that I painted this guy's cap. I modeled it off an armored corps or an armored officer in the German here. And then, so this guy who I'm using, the Rundherd, again, see, I'm using a lot of like dark grays and stuff because I think it contrasts well with the green that I'm using for the skin, and the red that I'm using is the accent color. So I'm going with the red helmets because these guys are they love to burn things, right? They're blood axes, but they're also pyromaniacs. So I've used a lot of reds as accents here, and something has happened. It's plasticine on it, which I'm just going to blame my kid for that and move on with my life because, the other thing that is a variant of the war track is the Scorcha, which is it was never called a heavy flamer, but you could certainly call it a heavy flamer. It was so there's my Scorcha, and you can see I've put them on these large oval bases. I'm not worrying too much about being period accurate with this army as I was with my fantasy orcs and goblins and my fantasy wood elves. I'm not going as period accurate with these. I will use parts from different eras where I see fit. And one of the parts that I'm using from different eras are obviously the bases. I'm using these oval bases, which are like Age of Sigmar, the current Citadel bases. And lo and behold, look at how well all these vehicles work on these oval bases. Like it's almost as if, like that works. This is a 32 millimeter, I think, is this one. So this is like a Space Marine base now. 32, and the rest are on 25s, and then some ovals. So I'm not worrying about that too much about being base accurate because I want the army to be more functional, because this is an army that I'm going to be playing quite a bit of games with, I think, because I really want to play some Rogue Trader. Yeah, so, and then the rest of the models that I received, so I've got this awesome guy who I love his standard, because it's basically just Space Marine bits, and you can see I've got a white helmet, a red helmet, so that could be a Sergeant, or it could just be a Blood Angel helmet, and I tried to paint it a little bit differently than the red I use here, just so that it doesn't quite stand out, and then the blue shoulder pad, clearly going to be a Crimson Fist, and then I like the little arm hanging off the back here, like any good orc should just, make a banner out of body parts. And, yeah. So, I'm just going to put him away. So, after that stuff was released, and at some point, actually, it's entirely possible this came up before the war track. I know that the buggy predates all the other orc vehicles. These are orcs in power armor. Excuse me. That wog really took its toll on my throat. My goal with this orc army, Gelfred, to repeat your question to the chat, are these orcs playable in 9th edition, or do they need to be in a custom game? There are substitutes and there are proxies that I could make. Like I could call this Scorcha. There's a buggy that shoots. There's a new buggy that shoots flamethrowers, right? And it's too bad that those vehicles, the war track, the buggy, the Scorcha, existed all the way from 1st edition, Rogue Trader, through 8 editions of the game. 7 or 8 editions of the game. Let's say 7, because 8th edition, I'm sure that there are rules. Yes, so in the indexes, in the index Xenos, there would be rules for war tracks, Scorches, and buggies. So 8 editions of 40K, those vehicles were usable in. Now we're in 9th edition 40k, and those vehicles are gone because they replaced them all with the, what is it? The Boomdaka Snazwagon, the Rucka Truck Squig Buggy, the Def Trike Rolla, which one am I missing? The Shock Jump Dragsta, and the one that's built on the jet, because I know that there are 5 of them. And they're amazing kits, and maybe one day I will build a contemporary modern orc army for 40k. I had one and I gave it away to some needy children, so there's kudos for me, I guess. Put some points up here and some gold stars for karma and all that, because I gave away a fully painted space orc army that I painted in 3rd, 4th edition. I think it was actually started off being Nico's army. Then I bought the army off him and painted the bulk of it and finished it. And it had red in it as well, because I love painting orcs red. If you go to eternalchronicles.ca and you look through the halls of the Goblin King and the galleries there, you'll see that historically I've always used red on painting orcs. And if the slideshow would actually show pictures of my painted some of the other stuff, you'll see that I've continued to use red, and I just like red, and which is what I'm probably gonna paint these guys as, because these guys are not gonna be blood axes. So this is a squad of 5 knobs in power armor, not mega armor, but I could proxy them for mega armor to use them in 9th edition to answer your question. So this army could potentially be playable in 9th edition with a lot of like trying to sort out what's what. Like, what's this guy? Well, he's got a flamer, so he'd be a burner boy. This guy's got a rocket, so he'd be an orc with a rocket launcher, right? I don't think there's an equivalent for an orc with a las cannon, but you could call him a Luda, right? He could be a Death Skull, he could be a Luda, he could be whatever. The hot splat gun would just be whatever the field gun is now, and things like that. So an orc with a bolter would just be an orc with a bolter, although this one's got a plasma gun. So, which is a whole conundrum in and of itself, because it's very hard to get plasma guns onto orc models if you follow the Rogue Trader rules from Here We Go and Freebooters. It's hard to get plasma guns. They don't have a lot of options for those types of special weapons. Same with the flamers. I actually, to use these guys in the Blood Axe list that's in the Here We Go book, I actually have to run them as knobs and hope that I roll flamers. Which is something I'm going to do on stream on one of the days. I'm going to go through and I'm going to roll up an orc army list and try and roll up an orc army list, because something that probably not a lot of people do know is that orc army lists in Rogue Trader were fairly random. You basically didn't buy gear, you bought rolls on a chart. So 5 points to roll on the special weapon chart, and on the ranged weapon chart, and you could get anything from a bolt gun to a melt-a-gun, right? Like all those like ranged weapons that orcs could get, and you might end up with like a random shotgun or something like that. So I'm going to do that on stream some point this month, once I've sort of have worked out what's going to be what. These guys are going to be a late paint, because they are not going to be blood axes. They're going to be a renegade goth knob warband, because I want to paint them kind of gothy, and also because I have some other fun ideas for them, and because as much as I love the idea of power armor, and like they kind of like some of these guys, like this guy could totally fit in with blood axes, this guy might totally fit in with blood axes. What I might actually do, since I'm using freebooter rules for them, because that's the other thing, is that there's so much you can do with this orc army list, because you're looking at 2 rule books, the Here We Go and Freebooters, which I don't have, unfortunately. I don't have a reproduction copy of Freebooters, so I'm going to try and convince my buddy Alex to lend me his copy of Freebooters for when I go through that. He's already said yes, so I don't know why I have to say I have to convince him, but, you know, it's good for the stream, right? So yeah, so these guys, you can see the ones with the horns are, like, clearly kind of gothy, and what I like about this one is he's actually got a chaos symbol on his arm, so they're totally going to be renegade knobs. And what might be cool to do is actually paint each one as a different clan, except for maybe Snakebite. You can even get away with Snakebite, right? Like paint this guy as a blood axe, paint this guy as a goth, paint this guy as a Death Skull, paint this guy. So do like that, and then, but I think I'm just going to run them. I think the reason I wanted to do them as goths is because I have One of the most ridiculous things in the game that has ever existed. Sorry, I've got bags and bags of loose orcs. I'm so happy about that. One of the most ridiculous things to exist in the game of 40k, in the Space Orc Army list. Where's your third there, guy? I got 2 here. Where's number 3? There he is. Just gonna hide him before, and then like a random orc head shows up. So this is the Orc Prospector from Gorka Morka. This is his head, and he's just got a really nice little cap on him. So random bits. So one thing that goth knobs can get for free is the Goth Rockers. And these guys were originally acquired for a Blood Bowl gang, or Blood Bowl team, of all the things to have them for. And they were just called the band. And when my Blood Bowl orcs during the camp, I would use them as cheerleaders. So, yeah, because you could buy cheerleaders, and so these guys are great for that. So they were acquired for that, and then I stripped them, and now they're going to be joining these guys as some mercenaries that my Blood Axe War Boss, who I will show you in a minute, will be hiring. So one of my all-time favorite orc models happens to be this Blood Axe War Boss. And that's this guy right here. And oh, what a fantastic model. So he's got a nice little potato masher, stick bomb in that hand, giant power axe. I love him. He's only a sergeant, but he probably doesn't know what that rank means. He probably thinks that those 3 chevrons means that he is the boss, because he is going to be my war boss. But he doesn't really lead. He is the war boss. He is in charge of the orcs. But the narrative that I'm going to forge for it, because one thing that is unique to Blood Axes, there's a couple of things that are unique to Blood Axes. One thing that is unique to Blood Axes that is very interesting is that they get human advisors. What does that mean? It means that there is, behind every good Blood Axe War Boss, is a human pulling his strings, convincing him to do things that are in his best interest. And usually it's an Imperial agent disguised as like a pirate king, or, you know, and essentially like providing material aid to the Blood Axes, because another cool thing about Blood Axes is that they can get looted vehicles. So you can kind of see the corner of it here, but this is actually going to be a ride for my flash kits, because when I paint this up, and if you know what this is, awesome. This is a battle wagon. This is actually a armor cast, or previously known as epic cast battle wagon, and it's based on the design of the epic scale orc battle wagon. Games Workshop would later make a version of this in plastic, but this is one of the original epic cast ones, and you can see I bought this used from somewhere in the UK, and I don't mean used as in it's ever been painted before, because it's never been painted, but whoever owned it previous cleaned it and assembled it, and so I'm going to not convert it, but I'm going to add to it, because I'm going to be building for flash kits. So it's going to have lots of banners hanging off it. It's going to be really bright and ostentatious for my flash kits to ride around in. The cool thing about Blood Axes is the human advisor and the ability to take looted Imperial vehicles. So my Blood Axe boss, my war boss, and his retinue of knobs are going to ride around in this. Now again, I said I'm not really worried too much about being era accurate. You can see this has got a chaos symbol on it. Don't ask where this came from. It's green because it was painted for my Omega Marines, which were a Space Marine army that I built in 3rd edition before the new Rhino was available. This has mail order armor plates on it, and you can see I've scratched off the Imperial symbols. And there used to be chaos symbols over there, because at one point I was going to use this. Look, it doesn't even have the bottom on it. A lot of people, a lot of players back in the day when we built our Rhinos, because I know that a lot of my friends did this too, they didn't bother sticking the stuff on the bottom because you can't see it. So you can see that it's the gray plastic before the Rhino. The armor plates were mail order, so you could mail order those, and I've got pretty much a full set. So I've got the front, the armor plates that go up over here and down the back, and then the skirts, the armored skirts on the side here as well. So this is going to be looted for blood axes. Now, you say, but it's a Razorback. The Razorback is a Rogue Trader model. It was available near the... I think it was around the time of the battle manual coming out, which so Rogue Trader, we sort of talk about early Rogue Trader and late Rogue Trader. Late Rogue Trader we sometimes call edition 1.5, because a battle manual and a vehicle manual were released for the game that changed how a lot of the game of 40K was played, to make it a game that you could play with more models. And that was very much a sign of things to come when 2nd edition 40K came out. The vehicle manual was one of the craziest things I'd ever seen, and I'll pull up, because I'm pretty sure in Here We Go I can show you. So the way that vehicles worked in 40K has changed a lot. It changed a lot even during the time of Rogue Trader. It changed several times during Rogue Trader. They never seemed to be able to get vehicles right. The vehicle rules in the Rogue Trader rulebook were later superseded by rules I believe they published in the Compendium, which is this book. I believe I want to say it's in here. It's entirely possible it's not in here. Oh, look at that. Who's that? Oh, well, that's just our friend, Marnius Calgar, Lord of Macragge. That's right. There he is in all his double-fisted glory. And I love here on his other power fist, he's got all these little digital weapons. So he's got, looks like a little digital digi-bolter, a little digi-something. I don't know. He's got 4 little digi-weapons on each of his fingers. Which didn't make it into the new model. He now had the gauntlets of Ultramar, right? But dual power fist, and this was a miniature, and everything. So this was a miniature. There was this. There was a little weapon stand for him, and then he had like a bodyguard, like a minder. Vehicles, yeah. So on page 74, and then it talks about the vehicles: Land Raiders, Predators, bikes, hardware, Craters, Imperial robots. Ooh, Imperial robots. So yeah, so there were vehicle rules in here that superseded the vehicle rules in the Rogue Trader rulebook. There were then later on, after the Compendium, we got the battle manual, which changed a lot of the rules, how the rules themselves worked, and sort of codified a lot of that. And you could see definitely that was the core and the DNA of what would become 2nd edition. The vehicle rules use these ridiculous profiles. So now you would have, and I tried to acquire one of these recently, and unfortunately the store that I'd seen it in previously, it had gone. So someone either bought it or someone threw it out, because you had this clear Mylar targeting grid. And you would lay the grid, so you would look at your vehicle. Pardon, I'm whacking the mic here. You would lay it over the top of this. If you were shooting at it in the front, you could only place the middle target reticule over this part of it. If you were shooting at the rear, you could only put it on this part. If you were shooting at the profile, you could put it anywhere you wanted. So you would say, well, I really want to hit that gunner, and the armor there is only 12. The armor on the fuel tank is more. This is all 12, 12, 12. If I really want to blow up the fuel tank, it'll blow up the whole thing, right? But it'll be easier to penetrate the armor going after like a wheel. But obviously, if your reticule scatters off into no man's land here, you miss. And the way it worked was, I believe, and I'm trying to remember, I believe you rolled your ballistic skill, and if you missed, or if you someone will have to remind me. I know that you could basically move the whole thing, right? And it was based on whatever you had rolled would determine how far you would move it horizontally and vertically, right? And then wherever your reticule ended up, that's where your shot went. So that's where you'd hit the vehicle. You would then roll to penetrate the armor, and then each location had its own damage table. So you would then, if you penetrate the armor, you roll on the damage table and see what the result was. And it could be something like sending it spinning out of control. You know, it doesn't seem to be. Oh, so here's what happens if you hit the Scorcher fuel tank. So if you decide you're going to be really bold and go for that 18 armor, you know, that really heavily armored fuel tank. Don't ask me why it's 18 armor and the rest of the thing is 12, but I guess they really pack the armor plates onto the thing. So then if you penetrate that armor, you would roll to C, and you on a 1 or a 2, you just kill the snotling because there's a snotling riding on the back of it. You could fuel tank could rupture and it could burn. There was a lot to keep track of. So the game was still cumbersome, still weighed down by its rule set. Oh, I almost revealed. So to get back off to vehicles here, so this will be this Rhino or Razorback, and this is the original Razorback turret. So the original Razorback turret was a las cannon and twin-linked plasma guns, and this is still to this day the best Razorback version that exists in the game. Because after that, the later versions they replaced it with either twin-linked las cannon or twin-linked heavy bolter, and then they started adding in like twin-linked heavy flamers, twin-linked. What were the other weapons you get? You get a multi-melta on it, and Forge World made bits for that and stuff. Not necessarily for this kit, but for the replacement Rhino, the current Rhino, which replaced this kit. But this is a Razorback. I'm missing some of the parts for it because, like I said, it has gone through a few iterations. It was originally this Rhino was originally purchased and built the second time I worked for Games Workshop before. No, because the Rhino had already come. No, the Rhino came out. New Rhino came out in 2003. So yeah. So this particular, not this. This is from a Razorback that I owned back in Rogue Trader times, but is gone. But I managed to hang on to this part. Yeah. So this Razorback will become his ride, and I can buy. So for him, I buy rolls. And I just keep rolling. You just keep paying those points and rolling until you get the equipment you want. That's how you build an orc army. It's going to be great when we do this on stream. When I take that book out and I try and roll up an orc army and see just how many points I have to spend in order to build him and his bodyguard of knobs accurately to what's actually on the model. So if I happen to like get a las cannon, I can buy a las cannon for this. I can mount it on it because any weapons that he rolls and doesn't use can be mounted on his transport and then fired by the crew, by the riders on the transport. So I could have this thing bristling with guns. I may take this off. I may remove this and open this up so that so that he actually has like a little command position, and I'll just because it'll be just a Rhino. It won't be a Razorback. And we'll see sort of what I come up with because this is going to be a big conversion project. I want to leave it mostly intact because, again, it's a material thing that he would have received from his human advisor or from trading with humans that would have, because if you know the lore of the Rhino, it was the most ubiquitous vehicle in the galaxy. Really, everyone had it. They were everywhere. There were civilian versions because almost all the standard template constructs out there could make Rhinos, right? And Rhinos were like extremely reliable. They never broke. Later on, they would talk about how they had these like inspirational machine spirits that were, determined, and how each Rhino has all the vehicles have personalities and things like that when they talk about machine spirits. So it wasn't just Land Raiders that had machine spirits. Rhinos had them too. But anyways, so that'll be his transport because what Orc boss wouldn't ride around in a what Blood Axe boss wouldn't ride around in an orc transport. So where's he getting all this stuff from? Because I can also take things like robots, Imperial robots, and I've got my hands on some. They're not here yet. I'm patiently waiting for them to arrive, being couriered by my friend Alex. Alex, you hear that? Yeah. Come bring me my Rogue Trader blisters. And again, that's stuff that's been acquired from Michael Logan over at Logan's Miniature Mart. Big ups, big props to him. He just manages to find this stuff. And, for better or for worse, I'm one of his best customers, I guess. And he knows that, he knows I'm looking for the old gold. He knows that so he knows what I'm looking for. and he seems to magically make it appear, and then there's a transaction involved, and then it's mine. So what else was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So where does he get all these wonderful toys? Well, it just so happens that his human advisor is an Inquisitor. So this is the first Inquisitor model. There is actually a write-up for him in the Rogue Trader rulebook. They call him Obi-Wan Clouseau, which is, if you've read the Rogue Trader lore, Obi-Wan Clouseau pretty much sums up the tone and tenor of the Rogue Trader lore, because it's so tongue-in-cheek because it knows it's derivative, that it plays off the fact that it's derivative, right? It talks about, like, because I mean, Space Marines are Sardaukar, right, or Starship Troopers, so all that, and then you look at sort of like look where all that, and we'll all talk about that at some point, not necessarily in Orktober, but at another time when I want to cover my interpretations and my feelings on the history of Warhammer 40,000. And how the lore and the artwork and the style and grimdark has developed. That's a huge project, actually, that I'm actually writing. So it may be a blog, it may be a vlog, it may be like a stream, something to cover. We'll see. So anyways, this is my Inquisitor, though. And I did own this model, not this particular one. This one was acquired more recently, but I needed to replace it because it had gone, it had been lost to time. So, and my Inquisitor is not Obi-Wan Clouseau. My Inquisitor has been since probably, I want to say, I think I first chose the name, and I'll show you my first one. It was Inquisitor Kafka Dosadi, and you can follow him on Instagram, because he is my alter ego, and he is definitely my avatar when I played a lot of 40K. Back in the day, and the first Kafka Dosadi model, and unfortunately he needs some triage here, was I made him for Inquisitor. So here he is. So this is the Inquisitor model that I painted. This was a 54mm model that came out for the Inquisitor game that was released in 2000. And this was the second time I was working for Games Workshop, so this is previous to the second time I was fired by Games Workshop. So this guy is a conversion. He's a combination of Eisenhorn, so Eisenhorn for this part and the torso, and then the lower part down here is from the younger Inquisitor model. The pistol is from one of the Scums, because I just really liked the look of this pistol. The sword, I think, comes off a Space Marine Librarian somehow. It's like this little power glaive, and I've got these little... It's just a fun model to make, and a fun model to convert. And then I sculpted a little Van Dyke onto him here. You can see. I painted him up, and I was really proud of him. So he sort of became my avatar in a lot of 40K games. And I've had various 40K models of him over the years. But I never really played armies that used Inquisitors. But this will be Inquisitor Kafka Dosadi. So, and the narrative that I want to forge for my Rogue Trader campaign, I will get into at some point. That is not an orc. Don't tell him that. So the backstory for him and how I'm setting up the Rogue Trader campaign I want to run is he actually he used polymorphine to disguise himself as an orc and sneak into this guy's orc hulk and then convince him and all the mech boys that they needed to build giant rockets so that they could move the orc hulk so that it would go in a different direction. So he had to redirect the orc hulk. And where he actually redirected it was straight at a planet called Logan's World. If you've read the Rogue Trader rulebook, you know that Logan's World is a lawless wasteland. It's basically it's planet Mad Max, right? So picture it like that. It's full of human and alien. It's this wretched hive of scum and villainy. So it's an entire planet of Mos Eisley or whatever. It was sort of an example of a Warhammer 40K world. And every 10 years, you can get to the planet. The rest of the time, there's this massive warp storm that blocks access to Logan's World. So it spends 10 years, it spends a decade isolated, right? And the Imperium has never been able to establish control of the planet. So most of the time it's run by like petty warlords and, you know, a bunch of guys with AK-47s and Toyota trucks, if you get that reference. So it's basically, it's Planet Mad Max. So every 10 years, the Imperium tries to show up, instill some discipline. So they send down like space police, or space marines or whatever to basically go and shake down the populace and get their imperial tithes, and then say, remember, the Emperor protects, so listen to the Emperor. And then the Imperium either leaves or they're not there, and then the warp storm closes up and the planet's isolated for another decade. So I want to set my games on that planet. And you know what? I'll pull up my book. I was going to talk more about this when it comes time to actually launch this. So I'll just go to the Logan. Here we go, Logan's World, and this just fits in perfectly because a lot of these Rogue Trader models I'm acquiring from Michael Logan. So this is Logan's World. So here's some pictures of Logan's World, and like I said, it's basically Mad Max the planet. But if you look at this picture, it's like a Dungeons and Dragons adventuring party, but in space. So let's see, what does it say here? Mercenaries. Okay, and of course, what is the capital of Logan's World? Hell's Reach. And here we go. Here's some more Logan's World stuff. So yeah, if you own a copy of Rogue Trader, or if you can get your hands on the PDF, you can read about Logan's World. I'm going to go into it and sort of expand it a bit more. Essentially, I'm going to set all of my Rogue Trader games on Logan's World, and it's going to be keyed around Inquisitor Dosadi attempting to figure out how he can permanently access the planet. And crashing a Space Orc Hulk into the planet is part of his plan. So yes, I'm not going to be streaming the battle reports. The battle reports, Gelford, will be produced content, so it'll be something that I will record and edit. And I'm just sort of working out the finer details on this. Obviously, I need to paint stuff for it. So this may not be something that you see until the new year, depending on how much work I can put into it. I have other projects, but this is sort of the project that I really want to get moving on. Obviously, I want to play Necromunda too because I love that game. So if I can get all the Necromunda stuff done in November that I need to do, which is all this terrain sitting on the shelf here, I need to paint all that. My Necromunda Escher gang is like 90% done at this point. It's just details, and I got to paint their hair and stuff. But that's like an evening's worth of painting to finish them. But I won't be painting them in Orktober because all I paint in Orktober is orcs. Greenskins, goblinoids, hobgoblins, bugbears, whatever it may be. This particular Orktober is spelt with a K. Next year's Orktober may be spelt with a C. Maybe it'll be Novembork. if I'm still painting this stuff in November to get it done, Orktober will become Novembork, and then we'll just carry on painting orcs. So essentially the idea is that Inquisitor Dosadi convinces the Orc war boss to get all the mech boys to build a bunch of big ass rockets that they build on the outside of the Space Hulk. Blast those rockets, turn the Space Hulk slightly on its axis so that it's now heading in a different direction. And where it's heading is that in like 50 years' time, that orc-infested Space Hulk is going to crash into Logan's World. Inquisitor Dosadi's got nothing but time. He's essentially, when you're a high-level, when you're a high-level Imperial agent like he is, he's got Juvenat treatment. He makes... His schemes are like measured in decades and whatever. We'll figure it out. I may make it like, it'll crash into the planet next week, right? Depending on the lore I want to build around it. And again, that's the kind of gaming content I want to produce. The Escher gang, I love them. Like I said, they're my favorite. They've been my favorite since the first version of Necromunda. So awesome. Welcome to House Escher there, Gelfried. So all the gaming content that I want to produce on the channel is all going to be heavily narrative. I don't want to. I don't do competitive gaming. And I haven't played in a tournament in 8 or 9 years. I think it was the last time I went to a tournament. I went to one of the Astronomicons here in Toronto. So I'm not a competitive 40K player. Finding someone to play Rogue Trader with me is going to be challenge enough, and I have 2 people so far that I've got on the hook to play Rogue Trader with me. But I can't, just be like, hey, let's play some competitive Rogue Trader, because God, who wants to play that? I just want to build stories. And then the same thing with the Necromunda. Necromunda narrative play is built into the heart and soul of what makes Necromunda awesome. So that's totally a narrative game, and we will be building a narrative around our campaign. My Rogue Trader campaign will have a narrative built around it. I've already sort of explained. I've explained too much at this point because it's still in the drafting phase where I'm sort of working out what it is, all the details that I want. But it definitely involves this guy being the master manipulator behind this guy and his army of orcs. And there'll be plenty of space pirates and maybe some odd aliens showing up that aren't necessarily orcs. There'll be some other aliens showing up. And just to sort of say, well, there might be some other aliens showing up. Yeah. Or, and at some point, there might be some of these guys showing up. I mean, we will see. There's plenty to do. The only army I don't have access to models for would be like old school Tyranids, like first Rogue Trader era Tyranids. I used to have a whole bunch. In fact, Tyranids is one of the armies that Nico and I shared. We essentially both had models and painted models for it, just so we would have that army that the other player could use. Look at this guy. Look at this guy's called Old Metal Space Marines. Oh, Old Metal Tech Marine. Look at that. So yeah, so there's plenty Rogue Trader content, and that's sort of gonna go. That's gonna lead out of our Orktober, because in order to basically play Rogue Trader, I have to have a painted army because I don't play with unpainted models. This is verboten. So I'm super pumped and super hype to paint some of these orcs, which I think I'm gonna finally do for you right now. So I'm just gonna tuck in here. You get to see my tummy there for a minute, and I'm gonna zoom in, zoom out, zoom in. Oh, my centering is all off, so let's see if I can fix that. Sorry if this is whoa, it's like going on a crazy wacky ride here. Oh my god, this is so difficult, and this is so not what I should be doing live. I should have had this worked out before, but somehow it got moved, I think, when I was trying to. All right, still yourself. All right, so these are the orcs that I acquired off Michael Logan a month or so ago, and I decided that this is what I would be painting. So I started to paint these, and then painting these made me realize that I needed to acquire more orcs, because I couldn't just do, a dozen of these guys. I really needed to be doing dozens and dozens of these guys. So we'll just clean up quickly here. Open up the ye old wet palette. And I realized, so most of these guys are at the same stage. These grots need their skin finished. So they need to be finished. I need to finish their eyes and then details and their poor little, look at the locks on the back. And they look so miserable. And they're like onesies. They're like infant onesies that they're wearing. I love the padlocks down the back. And then you can see that there's a chain. So this guy's got a chain around his ankle where he'd be chained, and this guy's got a chain around his wrist where he'd be chained. So maybe I'll get some very small jeweler's chain and actually chain them to this guy, since they're the runts that run the gun. And this guy I'm using, as I said, I'm using him as a runt herd, not as a mech boy, because I'm going to have plenty of mech boys. Because of the other thing that, so the way you build armies is you're really building a warband for your war boss. So you start with him, you start with his knobs, and you start with his odd boys. Odd boys are the orcs who basically make Orc Society run. So your runt herds are like your merchants and your slavers. Your mech boys build everything. Your pain boys are your doctors, and then your weird boys are your psychers, right? Orcs can't leave a planet without a weird boy, because they need the weird boy to tell them when there's a Hulk in space. So it used to be that orcs didn't really have their own fleets of ships. That's kind of a thing that they kind of did for Battlefleet Gothic, was they made an orc fleet. They didn't really have ships. The way that orcs would travel is orcs are really good at building teleporters, right? They get the weird boys, so we'll go into how orcs evolve and how an orc society grows up on a planet. So what I'm going to do, while I talk about that, I'm just going to let you know, I'm going to paint his skin, because his flesh is not quite done, and I'm just going to show you quick how I do the orc flesh on these guys. So I went for a slightly different green for the orc flesh on these guys, I believe. Yeah, so I used this meadow green. It was either this meadow green or it was another green. I probably should have... I unloaded a whole lot of models. Yeah, it is this meadow green. Yeah, I unloaded a whole bunch of models onto my table today just to show you. And what I should have done was I should have made sure that I had all the paints that I use for these guys ready to go. So you can't really see that, but I just put a little bit, a tiny bit of that green down. And then the way that I highlight orc flesh is I actually will use a human flesh. I will use this, which is bright skin. And that is the color I will use to blend up the green. Interesting, correct? And I'm not really sure when I started doing this, but it was probably after I'd painted a whole lot of 6th edition fantasy orcs, and then just decided that I think it might have been, so you can see what I'm doing here. I need my paper towel back. Yeah. Pardonnez-moi. So I'm just going to take this green, and I'm just going to start applying it very lightly over top of the base coat. The base coat is this green, and then washed with Army Painter Soft Tone. Sometimes, depending on the way I want the finish to look, I will actually use like a flesh shade to shade it, because you can see that it makes the green quite brown, or browns up the shadows. And then sometimes it all depends on what I'm going. So anyway, so how do orcs get off a planet? Well, that's why they need weird boys. And weird boys are apparently, I think they're one of the last odd boys that an orc culture will develop. Like the first ones that they develop are the runt herds, right? So they develop commerce first. And then, I mean, this is beyond just like the basic orc boy. These are the odd boys. So these are the orcs that somehow know how to do things. And that's because orcs were essentially genetically bred by a progenitor race called the brain boys, who the speculation is that that's what the snotlings are. So that's what the runts are, is they're these brain boys that have lost their minds, that have basically lost their brilliance, but they made the orcs. They genetically created the orcs, and some say they genetically created the orcs to fight chaos, but I don't think that's the case. I actually think that the Tau were genetically created by someone to fight chaos. I think that the orcs were actually genetically created by the brain boys to fight the Tyranids. Because what is the only way to fight something that basically just devours life, right? Well, a fungus. And in 40K, orcs are basically a fungus. They are almost like the galaxy's natural reaction to being invaded by a foreign entity, which would be like the Tyranids. I don't know. It's all rampant speculation. One thing I've always loved about the 40K and Warhammer lore is that they left a lot of things unsaid. All right, like we know that the brain boys existed. Orc mythology talks about the brain boys as being the smartest of all the orcs, and they genetically created all the other orcs. Maybe the brain boys are hobgoblins, because is that actual European mythology that the hobgoblins created goblins because they wanted a slave race? I feel like that's from like Norse mythology. Anyways, so I'm going to move up to the next level here because I've essentially just gone over and brought up the skin a little bit. So now I'm going to take some of my bright flesh here and I'm going to blend it in with my meadow green to lighten up the flesh just a little tiny bit more. And take that. And again, I'm adding that in layers over top. Very light layers. I'm actually going to lighten it just a tiny bit more. And again, blending is kind of like I'm back and forth on how on what I will do, and by to explain myself in what I just said that probably doesn't make a lot of sense is I probably will go back and touch it a few times with a combination of this, like, you know, so that I'm highlighting all the way on the, like, as I go. I'm not necessarily doing all one layer, all the next layer, all the top layer. I can do 1, 2, 3 layers and then move on to the next spot and do 1, 2, 3 layers. And again, it's about mentally controlling how much paint is on your brush, just using the power of your mind to control how much paint gets onto your brush. And those are the types of things that you can't teach. You can't teach the understanding of pressure, like how much it takes. That can only be achieved through practice, right? You can obviously instruct people and say, this is what you need to do. You need to figure out brush control and pigment control on your brush, right? But in order to really, you know, be successful as a, so you can see I've gone 1, 2, 3 on the tip of the ear there, and then like that on that ear there, and we can do like the tip of the nose. So tell me if what I'm saying doesn't make any sense to you, and I'll try and smarten up and see if I can figure out a better way to explain my esoteric concepts and theories on how you should paint your models. And again, it all comes down to time. Like none of the great masters became the great masters, you know, by painting for a year, you know, or painting for 6 months. They became great masters because all they did was paint, right? Or sculpt or whatever they did. So again, knuckles, you know, when you make a fist, your knuckles turn pretty white. Using the bright flesh with the green helps give orcs, my orcs at least, in my opinion, a far more natural feel. Like it makes it feel like that's actually their skin. And I think where I kind of first started to really see that, whereas if you look at some of my older work, I highlighted green with green, like with like a lighter green, and it made the flesh look very green and artificial. In more recent years, I've started working with using, like I said, using a flesh color, a natural flesh color to highlight. And I will tell you, the one artist, and it's not a miniature artist, that really influenced the development of how I paint my orc flesh, and that would be Paul Bonner. Because if you look at a lot of his orcs that he painted, the color work that he did, their flesh has this like greenish tone to it, but at the same time, it has sort of it looked like skin, right? Like it looks like real skin. And I think that's more what I've tried to develop in my own personal style of painting with orc skin, is developing that ability to make it look like skin. So yeah, we're getting there. And again, you don't have to do this many steps. This is not only is this a gaming army for me, but this is a showcase army. This is the last time I ever want to paint Rogue Trader orcs because there's so many more orcs out in the world that need money to paint them. So not because I don't like painting Rogue Trader orcs, but because I'm at the point now in my life where I should be producing my masterpieces, right? I should be, not that. Let's see. So I'm going to add a little bit of green here, and I'm going to sort of bring this back down. Across the knuckles there. So again, I'll take some green, and what I love about the wet palette is that it helps you really control your paint distribution, because the best way to paint skin is with multiple thin coats that show the previous layer through. There's one of the bonus features, Lord of the Rings DVDs. Let's talk orcs and Lord of the Rings for 2 seconds here. In the Lord of the Rings DVD, there's a part where I think his name is Gino, and he's an airbrush artist, and he created Boromir, the dead Boromir that they send over the falls. That's fine. That they send over the falls. So that was it was built. It was a mannequin that they built, and he talked about painting the skin, and he talked about how he airbrushes. And the way that he airbrushes is that it's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of transparent and translucent layers, because that's what your skin is, right? Like that's what your flesh is. It's all the layers of your skin down to your musculature and stuff, and this is what you're seeing through. That's what's reflecting through. So when painting skin on a model, I like to apply that same sort of principle of multiple thin layers, because that's essentially what you're doing, is you're building up layers of skin, and you will get a far more realistic, natural look to your skin by doing it that way. And yeah, so there we go. So there's a bit more to do on him, and this is almost going to be straight bright flesh at this point. So, and then I go back in, and there's a few other things that I will do, mostly around the face. So I'll do the bottom lip here. And I'm just going to turn them upside down, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up from the bottom lip towards the nose. And I'm just going to add some striations or some little things there that will help to create the illusion of wrinkles, or that his upper lip is, orky. And then on his bottom lip, again, this is just multiple thin layers, but I'm pretty much using pure bright flesh at this point. The bottom lip, which will then be washed. But not the top lip. But I do wash around the eyes, and I'll show you that. So the tip of his nose, again, tiny little bright skin. His brow, I'm just going to start about here and go out. Pick out that brow, right where it meets the nose too. Control the amount of moisture on your brush with your tongue, or with your lip, because that's a thing you can do. And we'll get there. And then his cheeks, basically just the tops of his cheekbones. This cheekbone kind of disappears into his shoulder pad. So I'm just going to add a little bit there. And that's just to help bring out some definition. A bit more on his nose. And then where his brow meets his nose, I kind of want to create an intersection, which is then going to be washed. So, and then we'll just take this, and I'm just going to do his knuckles and maybe his elbows. So elbow here, right at the corner. Elbow here, and then knuckle, 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 knuckle. And that is essentially the bulk of his flesh done. There is one more step to do. I do the faces, obviously, arms, legs, whatever. You take it to a certain point and you go, okay. The face needs a little bit more attention. So the first thing my face needs are some eyes. So I'm going to bring out my trusty rusty 000 here, and some trusty rusty. How do I paint orc eyes? Well, I paint orc eyes the same way I paint laser eyes. So I use a red, and then I use a yellow, golden yellow. But there's a step in between, which you'll be able to see, and I can show you on some of my other models. But I'll show you on this one as I do it. Here, I'll show you, and I'll see if you can guess what it is that I'm doing. Ah! Oh, he didn't fall too far. And he fell onto leather, so he's all good. So if you look at his face, you look sort of... I did much the same thing. The green is slightly different, and that's fine. Because orcs are orcs, and they're going to be, You can see that I've washed the bottom lip here. And if you look at his eyes and you look around his nose, you can see that I've added a little tiny bit of wash as well. So, and this is Johnny Boombox. That's his name. Johnny Boombox, because he's got a boombox and he's got headphones on and he's got his little Walkman on the back here. Johnny Boombox. This is my orc with las cannon. I don't know where the hell he's going to fit into this army. But we'll figure out something, right? So I'm going to take my red here. So there you go. Boop. A little tiny bit of red. And then this is lantern yellow. And maybe I'll go, just because I'm going to live dangerously, and I'll use candlelight yellow. Yeah, it's almost the same. It's just a little bit brighter. Because orcs should have beady little glowy eyes. And, of course, the best way to highlight red, low disk space. The best way to highlight red is with a yellow. So we'll take our, and then figure out where his eyes are, first thing, because oftentimes they will have eyelids, and I've made the mistake of many a time on orcs. Hopefully, oh, you can't see this because of the barrel of the gun. All right, I'll turn it so you can see it, and then I'll see. Hopefully, this might be more tricky. Okay, there we go. And I'm just gently picking out that eye. I'm going to turn it this way and get a bit more of that eye. Hopefully you can see that fine. So there's one eye, and then his other eye. There's his other eye. Oh yeah. Man, I love Space Orcs. I love Space Orcs too, Liam. Big ups. Space Orcs all the way. USA. I'm not even American. I'm Canadian. All right, so now, Reikland Flesh Shade. Simple enough. Little Reikland Flesh Shade. And I've always liked GW's Flesh Shades going back. Their first Flesh Shade that I can remember using chestnut ink as a Flesh Shade. They had a brown ink, and if you mix the chestnut ink and the brown ink together, you could make a decent Flesh Shade. I'm not sure when they make an actual Flesh Shade. I remember the Flesh Shade that... how many times am I going to say Flesh Shade until it starts sounding really weird? When they came out with the hex pots with these lids, but they were the hex pots, there was a Flesh Shade. Oh no, it would have been the Coat d'Arms Flesh Shade, and it was really orange. And I think that's one I used on my Escher. And then for a while there, like my fleshes started coming really orange. Anyways, so I'm gonna hit his whole bottom lip with this. So I'm gonna start here, and his whole bottom lip is gonna get flesh shaded, and I'm gonna try and put enough into the recesses there that it helps to create a natural shadow. Because I like having my orcs with these, like, you know, bottom lips that look like lips. And I used to do, like I said, I used to do them just green. And then I guess I was looking at Paul Bonner artwork one day and was just like, man, the way he does orc flesh, that's the way I want to do orc flesh. So that's the way I do orc flesh. Wow, this is amazing. My analytics are like literally nothing. I can tell that there are people watching, but it's telling me that there is nobody watching. And I'm not getting any feedback on my analytics. Maybe I'm not live anymore. Yeah, I'm just going to keep painting. So anyways, so you can see that I've added the red to his eyes. So now I'm going to go back in with my really small brush here and the flesh shade, and I'm going to wash because this way, you're creating natural shadows and you're making it so those eyes sink in and you're defining the area of the eyes with the wash. I also like to take the wash and go down sort of inside the cheeks here a little bit. So I'll kind of make like a little crisscross applesauce. Across the bridge of the nose so that it separates the nose from the brow. And I might even go up the brow if there's like something here, which he kind of has like a few wrinkles. I might go up the brow a little bit to help pick that out. You can see he's coming along. And then under his nose, because under his nose would probably be pretty nasty. I can't see an orc having well manicured nostrils. So, and again, that will help put some shadow inside the nostrils and helps pick that out. And then around the nostrils, down the cheeks, around the nostril, down the cheeks. And there's one more step to do on this face. Well, two more steps to do. this one will be super, super easy and fast. So I'm going to take my red. I'm going to take my yellow. And I realize I don't really have enough yellow paint on here, so just let me grab. I think I put a little spot on and didn't really get much of anything. So we'll take that yellow and that red, and then we're just going to dot the eyes. So like dotting your eyes. Put a dot there, and again, that's just to help make that eye look a little glowy and a little beady. And you can put as much or as little as you want, depending on like how sunken the eyes are. The more sunken the eyes, the more I'm going to want to put. The less of the red or the flesh shade that shows through, the more green or the more red, you know. But I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, baby, look at that. That's an orc. So there's only one thing left to do. Take the paintbrush out of my mouth and paint his teeth. Yeah. Oh, I gotta get that external drive hooked up. Where are we going? So let's just go with Tusk Ivory. I mean, generally when I paint orcs' teeth, in fact, I need to paint all these guys' teeth. So this is an establishing moment. So this guy's his teeth have been painted, but a bunch of these guys need their teeth painted. So that's what I'm gonna probably finish the stream with right now, because we're closing in on 2 o'clock, and I'm gonna close the stream by painting a whole bunch of these space orcs' teeth. Teeth are usually one of the last things I will paint when I'm painting orcs, although it's really, really easy. So just figure out where the tooth is, and like that. And you don't have to, you don't have to go all the way to the bottom, because again, I'm going to wash these. These will be highlighted. So there's his little teeth poking up, and then we got this guy right here. What's his name? Frenchie? I don't know. He's got a maroon beret, so he's kind of like a, I don't know. I gave him red hair too, and I get this like Highlander, Royal Airborne feel off this guy. So he's definitely a blood axe. He's definitely a commando. And okay, so that brings me back to why I chose blood axes. And it's because of the orcs that I wanted to paint. I wanted to paint these original old school orc guys, and they're very much fit in with the blood axe look, because they're kind of militarist. They're kind of militarized. They've got equipment and uniforms. Like, I'll show you this guy with the flamethrower here. Like, I mean, if that's not a World War II German here uniform with those epaulettes and that cap, so that's the sort of the idea I went with these for these guys. Is they are panzorks, like panzer but orcs. They're panzorks. Get it? Yeah, that's what these guys are. So we'll paint Johnny Boomboxes, and I just while I'm painting orcs, I tend to name them. So not all of them, but some of them. Like, he got a name because he was being painted, and I was like, yeah, Johnny Boombox. That's just where it came from. Who else needs their teeth painted? You need your teeth painted, don't you? Yeah, you got like one little snaggle coming out here, don't you? There we go. Whoops. Try and keep my painting on the stream there. There we go. So, Liam in the chat says, I remember reading an old White Dwarf second edition battle report between Blood Angels and Orcs. Just love the massive horde of colorful orc clans. Yes, I love that look too. And that's actually a good segue out of painting these suckers as soon as I finish this guy's tooth. And then I will talk a bit more and talk about the future plans for this orc army. Once I get these teeth. Teeth. On my runt herd. My mech boy runt herd. Which is fine because, so like I said, you get all those odd boys, and blood axes can only have one of each odd boy except for mech boys, which they can actually get double of. Because they have a lot of mech boys, because they have a lot of Imperial equipment to maintain and stuff. Oh, this guy's flesh needs to be painted too. It's not quite finished. Well, I will finish that. Yeah. So, all right. So what are my plans for 40K for this Rogue Trader Orc army? So like I said, I'm doing a Blood Axe army. Doing a Blood Axe army, and then I'm going to expand out and do some freebooter stuff, which I showed you those orcs and mega armor, so they'll be freebooters. I have a bunch of other I have actual freebooters, so I have like bags and bags of loose orcs. So who wants to look at some bags and bags of loose orcs briefly here while I explain? So my Blood Axe army will be the core army. My Blood Axe army also has no problem hiring mercenaries, which tend to be freebooters, right? So this is a freebooter. And this is another mech boy. So these are the later models. So these models were released. Actually, these freebooters were released when the freebooters book came out around that time. So when they started to release orcs, so here's a really early Goth model. And they started to release orcs without arms. And there's an interview with Kev Adams where he said that that's when he started to kind of start losing interest in the project and doing the orcs, because he much preferred to do like the one piece. But the mandate that had come down from the studio was that they wanted orcs to have separate arms. So here's a separate arm sprue that I'll be using for, sorry, it just keeps telling me my disk space is low, and I just don't care because I have plenty of disk space. It's just that particular disk space is low because that's where the backup stream is recorded. So it's no longer backing up. Oops. Which is fine. YouTube keeps everything for me anyway. So yeah, so here we go. So freebooters. So they started doing these. So they did these plastic arm sprues and these plastic weapon sprues. And I'll drag out one of those. And they actually released a whole set of plastic orc boys at the same time, which I have some random bits here and there from. Is that someone's phone number? No. That'd be funny. So yeah, so the plastic orc boys, which I have some that are waiting to be stripped, but they're plastic, and I dislike stripping plastic because sometimes it can get messy. And I much prefer just having all metal models, anyways, because metal is metal. So this is like shoulder pads and stuff. So this is all old orc bits from that old plastic sprue. I have orc bits from every possible generation. And I used to have a lot more. In fact, I've got some still sorted into bags. A lot because like I said, I've been painting orcs with a C and orcs with a K. Basically, the entire time I've been painting miniatures, I always come back to orcs. And that's one of the things when building an army is that there are times where I will start an army and then I'll realize that, all I want to do is just paint more orcs. So I'll go back and I'll paint some orcs. And then, so you can see that there's 3rd edition, there's Gorka Morka bits in here, there's Necromunda bits in here, there's much later random bits from 3rd edition mostly. That's from a Land Raider Crusader. So, and like I said, when I'm not going to worry about keeping things period accurate, I just want it to look orky. So I'm not going to use models, like miniatures, from anything post 2nd edition, 40K for my army, but I am going to use bits and stuff wherever it's appropriate and whatever I feel is appropriate. If I feel it's not appropriate and it doesn't work with the theme of the sort of the classic orc look, then I won't use it. And if I think if it's a bit that, you know, is on a plastic kit that came out last year when they released those new buggies, and I like that plastic bit, and I think that plastic bit might look really cool on my looted on my battle wagon or on my looted rhino, then I'll do that. Like I'm not gonna hold myself to making sure that everything is super period accurate. That's for Warhammer Fantasy, in which case I'm extremely retentive about making sure that, if this bit needs to come from a model that would have been available at the time that this model was first available, because sometimes you lose your mind thinking things like that. So here we go. So here's our orc with a las cannon, and that wash is all dry. What I'll probably do is I'll probably yellow those eyes just a bit again, put another little yellow dot on each of the eyes, and then I'll have to finish the teeth. You're going to see a lot more of me painting these orcs over the coming weeks, over the entire month of Orktober, because the goal here, as you saw at the very beginning of the stream, is to get all of these guys painted. And not only all of those guys painted, but as soon as Orktober ends, and if it's got to be Novembork, then so be it. We'll do Novembork. But I also have a whole lot of other Rogue Trader stuff that is ancillary to these orcs that I want to get painted. And also, I have people who I've roped into playing Rogue Trader with me, and I have to kick them in the butt and get them to paint their Rogue Trader stuff, which there may be bribery involved. There may be coaxing and being like, well, if you don't have this guy, I could, but make sure you paint him. And I have a bunch of Eldar stuff that needs to get painted. So, and I think what I actually want to do, and I discussed this with Ash back when we were talking about this a long time ago, talking about doing a Rogue Trader project for his channel, Gorilla Miniature Games. We were discussing doing period accurate terrain. So making a Rogue Trader table. So making a table that would probably be a green, either like a felt mat or a green flocked mat. Making tree bases and buildings out of things like yogurt containers, and making deodorant skimmers. And if you know the reference to that, you get that. Yeah, no one cares. No one cares if there's no space on my hard drive. So doing like period accurate and like scratch building a lot of stuff the way that we would have scratch built terrain back in the olden times, and especially for Logan's World. I'm not opposed to using some third-party manufactured stuff. I have some foreground Adobe buildings. Foreground who makes MDF terrain. I have a couple of their like Adobe Afghanistan huts that literally you could use from anything from the Crusades to like modern day Afghanistan. These little like Adobe, no, they wouldn't be Adobe. Maybe they would be. Whatever they are. They're these little huts, and they look like the orc architecture from the era. So from like that second edition Orc Clan stuff. So I think I'm going to cut it there because we are closing in on 2 o'clock. We are at 2 hours. I think it's been a really good stream today. It's the first day of Orktober. Everybody celebrate. Everybody Orktober. Hashtag Orktober. Use it. Why? Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook. Eternal Chronicles on Facebook. Eternal Chronicles. The Eternal Chronicles on Instagram. Go to the eternalchronicles.ca, the website over there. The website right here. Go to this website here. Look at my stuff. Join me. Give me feedback. Like this is just totally a work in progress. This entire enterprise I'm doing right now pro bono. And we'll see where we sort of go from it. Like I said, right now, all I want to do is stream every day, paint for you guys every day. And that's my plan right now. And the month of October, it's going to be all green skins. I may throw in a few things here and there that aren't necessarily Space Orcs, but the Space Orcs project is the focus of this October. If I finish, and I'll paint something else orky, because I've got tons of stuff. Oh, man. And I haven't even shown off the grots that I've got, too, because they're actually... but we'll get to that, because we got a whole month. So I'm going to cut the stream there, and I'm going to tell you guys to take it easy. Have a good Thursday. I will be back here tomorrow at 12 noon painting orcs. Same orc time, same orc channel. Yeah. So